I was saying, this is the second of our Young Professionals Talk series that we've started this year with a particular focus on a different themed topic relating to geography and targeted at tertiary students and early career professionals so that we can kind of get together, have a chat about the areas that we're working in, what we're working on, and hopefully get to know each other a little bit better as well. So we have 3 speakers tonight, which I'm very excited to hear from. You would have seen their bios online, and they'll be talking about their experiences working in the geospatial industry, hopefully a little bit about their backgrounds and potentially a bit of advice for anyone out there who's considering starting a career in the geospatial industry and what that might look like and how they might get into it. So without further ado, we'll welcome our first speaker to the stage, Oliver.
Hi, my name's Oliver. Work at Esri currently. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Yagara and Turrbal people, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So yeah, by history, I started out in a Bachelor of Urban Environmental Planning and Science, a dual degree, which yeah, it was interesting. Did first 2 years in planning and science. I really found GIS interesting when I first did my intro to GIS course. Yeah, that sparked something. I wanted to explore it further. So yeah, I made my way into the more advanced one, the spatial modeling course. Quite interesting. Ended up dropping the planning degree to focus specifically on geography and human geography, so how GIS and human geography can be interlinked together, which then, yeah, brought me to my thesis, which was more focused on the human geography side. I'm not sure if you've heard of the book from David Graeber, Bullshit Jobs, A Theory. It's quite an interesting one where he details 5 theses for how half the jobs that we work could be bullshit. Highly recommend reading it. It's very interesting. So that shaped my bachelor thesis. Yeah, during that time I started at Australian Spatial Analytics, which was a startup, just started up. It's a social enterprise where we bring people with autism, train them up in GIS and data analytics and cleansing, and then yeah, sort of launch them into the workplace without the typical, I don't know, barriers to entry that they experience. So during this time I was finishing up uni and yeah, transitioning to full-time, well, part-time work at that stage, which was definitely challenging trying to find the time between the two to focus on them. Yeah, I don't really have any tips for that, but it was definitely a challenging time. So yeah, I got through that, graduated, and then transitioned to full-time work, which I still miss uni today. It's definitely, it's a fun time. Yeah, so now from there, working there, managing the pressures of working at a startup, trying to find what I enjoy doing, what don't I like doing. So there I worked in I did business development for GIS, consulting, management, and trying to find like where I actually enjoy working. It could be quite challenging. Ended up finding that I quite enjoy doing the actual GIS work, which I decided at that point that I wanted to switch roles and go to a company where I could solely focus on that, which is how I ended up at Esri Australia, which is where I am now. So yeah, the process of interviewing and telling your manager that you're leaving, it's quite daunting. Sure, I still have not got the hang of telling someone that you want to leave the role. It's quite uncomfortable, but yeah, you get through it. I don't really have any much advice for it. It's quite a challenging piece is challenging, time to go through. But yeah, it's better to rip the band-aid off, I find, give as much notice as possible. So now I'm at Esri. It's going good. I'm working for one client there. It's everything. That's my experience so far. Any questions?
But our second speaker, I'm not sure if it's Ada or Ida. Would you like to come online?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Also, how do you say your name?
It's Aida.
Ida, awesome. Welcome, Ida. Glad to have you with us tonight. Do you have any slides to share or?
Yeah, I just have a quick slide. It's nothing too fancy, but hey everyone. So I'm Aida Tengku. I'm currently a graduate GIS consultant working with Oricon Australia. I'm based in Sydney, but I did study in University of Queensland, which I graduated back in 2021. So what's really popular in consulting is that they would ask, so what's your story? So that's my first slide, if I can go next. What's actually my story? So my story is that I am originally from Malaysia. So after I graduated high school, I thought in order for me to grow, I really want to take up this opportunity to learn geology. I was really interested in the outdoors and I wanted to learn more. But in my country, there wasn't much that they offered in the local universities. So I moved to Brisbane in 2018 to study Bachelor of Science. In the beginning, I started majoring in geology at the University of Queensland. But then after I started taking more focus on geographical sciences courses, I guess, I started to like more a route towards geographical sciences. And I think in my GIS classes, I actually found it really hard. But remote sensing was really fun. I thought, oh, so this is how you combine both the digital world and the physical aspects of sciences. So by the time it's my final year of my studies, I got a bit lost. Do I actually want to do pursue geology at that time, or do I want to continue geographical sciences? I was thinking a lot about whether I wanted to look at rocks my whole life. But then I also really like design because I was volunteering as a designer for the Malaysian Society in uni, and I love designing using design softwares, and I also love geography. So I was wondering how I could link them all together. And then that's when I found the art of cartography. It's just that how can you tell a story from this piece of paper, or just now everything is digital? How can you tell a story from just a map? So that's when after I graduated, before I graduated, I took up all the courses in GIS and remote sensing. It's actually quite funny because before I pursued this route to actually work in GIS, I told myself in second year, I remember telling someone beside me in the tutorial class, I will never work in GIS. But somehow I ended up here because I continue to like, and I feel like there's a big opportunity in this field, especially when now after COVID, everyone got into the digital world, everyone was more accepting. So after I graduated, I looked around for graduate programs, which usually starts in February. And I managed to get an offer by the time it was May, but it was really difficult to find a graduate program that specializes in GIS because it's such a, I would say it's still a growing field in Australia. There's more opportunities in environmental management or planning or geology, but now it's definitely changing. At my workplace as well, I think we're trying to find more people who love GIS and remote sensing and whether they would take up this journey to go and learn how to use it at least in engineering. What I've learned in my job, I've managed to finish up 1 year as a graduate GIS consultant. There's a lot of collaborative work because my company focuses more on engineering. So we do work with a lot of people from different backgrounds, either engineering or non-engineering. It's great. You learn a lot definitely on the job. You can't wait for people to tell you what to do or want to study it, because you kind of have to figure out things for yourself, but there's always support needed. Also people giving you support if you ask questions. But what's great about working in my line, at least, is that we can work across multiple projects, whether it's transport or water or energy or urban planning. And what I like about working as a consultant is that people will ask for your advice because, you know, they think you specialize in the area, and that's when you can actually educate people about geospatial and what we can do with it. But of course, you have to be patient as well, because not everyone understands yet what our capabilities are. So my advice to those who are still in uni or are planning to get into, you know, GIS as a career, don't ever stop learning. I think there's so many ways, so many resources that's free now. YouTube, there's Coursera, there's a lot of things. Even at uni, just have a conversation with people, what they like, what they don't like, and find an area that maybe you can pursue. I think what I regret for not doing back in uni is that I could have, you know, find an area, let's say design. I could look into more of urban planning and see where we could, you know, use geospatial and build out a portfolio, and also have spend some time to work on an independent project that's, you know, that you could show your passion. But again, it's normal to feel lost. It's okay. That's why there's always an opportunity to ask people, especially with LinkedIn. It's great. I wish I met more people in the geospatial world so that now it could have been easier. But I guess these kind of events make that much easier now. Just like a quote that I really like is that people don't know what they have, which is the data nowadays, until they can see it and how it relates to other things. I think that's the aspect about geospatial that I really like, is that you can visualize everything. And then in the end, you could combine that and tell a story. And in the end, people can make decisions from that. That's the, you know, capabilities of GIS that we're still trying to promote. Yeah, so that's my story. I hope everyone got a few things from that. Now it's like, what's your story? You can build that in like no rush. In the end, you're the driver of your life. Yeah, that's all for me.
Thank you so much, Aida. I love that. And I love that quote. I know I'm definitely also one of those people who I like to be able to see it in front of me. I guess that's why I like geography. Maps quite speak to me in that sort of spatial visualization of things. The data can really start to make sense.
Yeah, great.
As with Oliver, we'll save questions until after our next speaker, which brings us to our last presenter this evening, Cassie. Do you have any slides to share, Cassie?
I do not.
That's all good. Do you want to pop your camera on?
Yes, you'll just have to. I'm Cassie, and I'm currently a spatial analyst at the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water. Nice long name there, so just happy for you to call it DQ. That's what everyone else calls it now. So I also did a Bachelor of Science with a major in Geographical Science at the University of Queensland at the same time as Giselle. And from the get-go, kind of always knew I wanted to do geography, and was very interested in geospatial kind of science in that area since the first Geom 1000 course. And so I definitely took that route kind of immediately, and did all of the geospatial subjects I could. They were always my favorite, but I do agree that GIS is not always the most exciting topic to learn about. But I think from early on, I really understood that, to me, GIS and remote sensing and other geospatial fields kind of provided you a platform and techniques in order to map, monitor, and evaluate kind of the environment. But you also needed to kind of understand the environment that you're trying to investigate. So alongside the geospatial subjects that I did a massive range of subjects from geology, marine science, conservation ecology, and even paleobiology, just because I could, to kind of form that base so that I could kind of apply GIS and remote sensing techniques across the board, with whatever I kind of was interested in, because there wasn't one really specific field that I wanted to go into. One of the things that has already kind of been mentioned before by the other speakers, that I didn't get the opportunity to do, but I would really kind of push the people in the room to kind of have a look into this, is doing an internship or an industry placement in kind of the area that they may be wanting to look at. So you can kind of get a bit of a foot in the door, but also get an idea of whether that's the type of work that you do or don't want to do. So to kind of, also the other thing that doing an undergraduate degree in geospatial science actually provided a really good introduction into a lot of the software that I still use today in my job. So ArcGIS, NV. I never got to use QGIS, but that's also used quite widely, and ArcGIS Online. So a lot of different kind of softwares in the same kind of fields that actually used quite a lot. And then, so I wanted to grow those skills and keep looking into that space. So for my honours, I actually used the Landsat data archive, so 33 years at that time of imagery, to investigate the relationship between kind of sediment change in the Burdekin River Delta, so just south of Townsville, and actually looked at whether there was a remote sensing would be able to detect changes, and then could we relate those changes to system processes, so things like floods, water, waves, tides, and human activity. So there had been a lot of kind of international studies that had done this manually, so drawing the coastline, but Australian deltas are just a tad smaller than international deltas like the Yangtze River Delta. So that wasn't actually going to be possible, and I wasn't going to manually process 33 years of imagery either. So I actually ended up using Google Earth Engine to actually create an automated method that would pull in pre-processed imagery, filter it to kind of one per year, and my undergraduate helped me understand that you really need to look for common images in order to actually compare them, so things like from similar seasons, wet, dry, if possible, which it's not always, and then also be able to understand what are the best type of methods to apply to get the outcome that you're looking for. So in my case, it was a combined method to do a waterline extraction, fun times. And then I actually created a timeline using wave data, tidal data, fractional cover, and human activity to be able to do that assessment of whether we can see that the remote sensing, which was able to kind of detect change as such. So obviously it drew the waterline for each image across the 33 years, and then we were able to compare that each year. And for an example of how it related to the activity in the Delta, was that a massive flood event in 1991, so the biggest that Delta had ever seen, even now, caused about 250 meters of erosion in the sediment banks on the coastline. So it was actually very easily able to connect the two and be able to show that you could automate this process. And I applied it to a different Delta in Australia, in the Fitzroy, and be able to repeat the same thing. And so it was also interesting to see that some of the things that you would assume, so for example, some of the wave features actually started to do something different from the remote sensing imagery to what would you be expected based on the wave data that you have in the area. Actually is the one who directed me to start looking at federal and government graduate programs, so state and federal level. Yep.
We lost you for a second. The internet in here is not the best. Would you just be able to repeat like your last sentence again?
From which part?
Someone introduced you.
Oh yeah, so my supervisor, Professor Stuart Finn, he directed me to apply for federal and state level graduate programs as a way to get into kind of some of the areas that do a lot of geospatial work. So Queensland government is obviously a key one. And the department that I'm currently in also does quite a range of remote sensing and GIS applications as well. So I was fortunate enough to get into, at the time, it was the Department of Energy, Environment and Energy. That quickly got merged with the Department of Agriculture, so it became the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment. But I actually went in through the generalist stream, so not specific to geospatial, because again, I still wanted to build up a lot of my knowledge base and have a better understanding of the department before I jumped straight into the geospatial side of things. So my first rotation was actually in environmental approvals, so looking at projects under the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, or the EPBC Act, which basically underpins the majority of the environmental actions that the department does. So biodiversity conservation approvals, even climate policy, a lot of agriculture actually sits under that too. So in the rest of the work that I'm currently doing, that actually formed the basis of my knowledge. And so every time someone would come talking about something that relates to that act, I was actually able to understand and quite quickly get on board with what they were talking about and understand their requests, which made it a lot easier to either complete the request or do the analysis that I needed to do. My second rotation was actually in agriculture policy, so a complete jump to the other side. During the height of COVID, which was when there was a labour shortage, and that was actually the team that I was in, looking at agriculture labour and horticulture, and it was a very reactive space. So despite it not being the type of area that I wanted to go into full time, it really helped me understand the type of work that I wanted to do. I didn't want to be in a super reactive space where everything had to be done in 2 hours and turned back around, but I also wanted to have more of a mix from long-term projects to kind of a mix between long-term and short-term. And during that time, also completely unrelated to geospatial, but I think it's an important point, I volunteered to help other graduates, so it was 10 of us in total, to run a department-wide, which was Australia-wide, trivia. And it actually showed all the back end of the department, how approvals happen, decision making, talking to executive, budgeting, and so on. And so one of the kind of key points I'd say is that wherever you do end up, kind of putting yourself forward for those volunteering opportunities, even if it's not the perfect thing you kind of are super interested in, is really invaluable, because it reveals all these different skills that actually come in quite handy later down the track. And finally, I got into the geospatial and information analytics section, and that's where I am now. And kind of immediately was pushed into the deep end because I had previous GIS experience. So as I mentioned, I knew how to use ArcGIS. And so there was at that time a lot of requests coming forward for spatial analytics and mapping for different kind of grant rounds, different programs that were finishing up or being reviewed. And so it was quite a relatively quick turnaround for quite a number of cartographic products So different maps, web-based as well as print. And a lot of that actually had to be done quite independent. So being confident in the skills that you do have or knowing when you need to ask for help is quite an important kind of skill as well. So a lot of them I had to make the decisions because I was the one between my supervisor and I who actually had more of the skills in ArcGIS on how to create certain things, data cleaning, so on. And then the second key thing I was working on that I'm still working on today is working with and collaborating with CSIRO on a new national habitat condition assessment system. So it's a novel remote sensing method to actually assess habitat condition across all of Australia that essentially takes reference sites that we assume are in good condition and gets their remote sensing signal over an 18-year time period to account for any natural fluctuation in ecosystem. So it can take into account natural disasters and doesn't say it's bad condition. And basically compares that to every other pixel in Australia and their remote sensing signal kind of as a woodland appearing as a woodland should. Yes or no, if not, it's in worse condition than it should be. It's not in reference condition anymore. So I did a lot of work trying to understand that. It was quite a complex statistical model and method, but I got to work closely with some of the top scientists at CSIRO in ecology and remote sensing. And I'm still working with them today, and I've been listed in some of their papers and had the opportunity to go to conferences. For example, just last week, talk about timing, I was actually in Brisbane presenting the HCAS and how the government wants to apply it at the Advancing Earth Observation Forum. So that we even had a booth there. And so that was a big kind of major project that I'm still working on, trying to upskill other people's geospatial capabilities, figure out how we can use this remote sensing model in different parts for decision making and reporting. And then my final rotation, so this ended middle of 2021, was actually sustainable procurement. So I've been a bit all over the shop. But ironically, despite it being sustainable procurement, with procurement being something basically anyone in government will have to do at some point in their lives, I actually ended up making an interactive web map from scratch all the way to publication because they knew that I had the skills and that's something that they were looking for. So it was looking into the plastics ban across Australia had come into place, and they wanted to be able to show for commercial businesses where you could actually go across the country to drop off your recycling. So that started from data collation to cleaning, validation, actually figuring out how to geocode because they only gave me addresses and not lats and longs, turning it into shape files, how to kind of symbolize it in a way that would make sense and get the right data for pop-ups, and then going through all the approvals at the end to actually get it to be a web service that the external facing world, I guess, could go see. So by the end of my grad program, it's actually revealed quite heavily how much of the department or how many fields use spatial information and need geospatial skills despite not being super obvious. So environmental approvals needed it to show you the location and layout of the project, what types of species could be found there, what types of threats were in the same area. Agriculture needed it to tell you where labor migrated, like the labor force migrated, where horticulture, so kind of vegetables and agriculture products existed across Australia. And then obviously sustainable procurement needed it to show you the location of where their recycling facilities were. And clearly the geospatial area uses it as well. So it revealed that even though it may not seem obvious, geospatial is kind of integrated into a lot of things. So my recommendation, instead of trying to just go into a geospatial field, if there's an actual area that you're interested in, have a bit of a look. You'll probably have to do a bit of a deep dive to actually figure out that there probably is some sort of geospatial area or geospatial work that you could do in that field. Some of the other things is that a lot of people say that they never use what they've ever done their degree. I can confidently say that by the end of my grad program, I probably used at least one thing from every subject I did at university, just because of such a broad range of different topics that were needed. And I think that's kind of the crucial points that I wanted to make, is that, yeah, try and get yourself out there and accept opportunities even when they don't seem like they're that relevant to you. Look to get experience before you're out of university. You don't have to wait to try and actually get a foot in the door and open up those networks. So going to conferences allows you to, you know, speak to people that you may not have really known before. I know, for example, at the Advancing Earth Observation Forum, I got to speak to a lot more people at Geoscience Australia, and our departments are really closely interlinked between the geospatial work we do, and I finally got to meet a lot of the people there. And then also find the area that you're interested in, and then you can look for geospatial. You don't just have to look more broadly at geospatial in general and hope you can find something that you might enjoy. Basically everything at this point uses spatial information and needs geospatial capabilities. And the last thing is that at the Advancing Earth Observation Forum, I went to one of the early career sessions, and the key point that they made, and I know not everyone's going to find this that interesting. I don't have these skills yet either, something I'm working towards, but is that programming, particularly Python, is a really critical skill in this industry. A lot of what you do needs to be able to be automated, or needs to be able to be repeated, or does it at a large scale. So doing it manually isn't really feasible anymore. Obviously that's not true for everything, but that was a thing that a lot of veterans, a lot of people who'd been in the industry for a long time, all of them said this in this session. So I thought I would throw that out there. So if you're not sure kind of which direction you want to go, or you don't hate programming completely, that might be something to explore as well, because it may give you a bit of an advantage. And I think all the job applications I've seen in the last year for my department and others all kind of require or have a desire for programming skills. So, and I think my very last point is also to think about data storytelling. So one of the things that's really come across in what I've been doing in the department is not just doing an analysis, not just making a map and leaving it at that. It's understanding, what are you trying to tell people out of this tool, out of this map, out of this analysis? How are you trying to convey a message, whether it's to just the people you're giving the product to your end users? There's quite a lot of different routes that you could go down, and that's, I think, kind of captured by a lot of different work, and not just geospatial. But I'll leave it there.
Awesome. Amazing. There was so much information in there, and really highlighted, I think, the versatility of the geospatial industry and all the different areas and applications that you can kind of apply data storytelling, like you said too. Cool. All right. Well, I might invite Oliver back up to stand next to me in this lovely spot, and get both of our online speakers maybe to unmute yourselves and pop your cameras on, and we'll start a little bit of a Q&A. I might kick us off with the first question.
Sure.
Which is, could you take us through a little bit of what does your work look like day to day? And second part, what would you say are the top skills or tools that you use in that day-to-day work? So we can start it off with you.
Sure, that's fine. So day to day, it's a mix between actual GIS work and working on the back end, so database work as well. So going back to Cassie's point about knowing Python, I would add on knowing SQL and even Java or Arcade is something that at this point it's a requirement more than a nice to have. Well, it's becoming that way. But yeah, my day to day, otherwise I'm working a lot at Esri with our online products. So web app builder, publishing data online, and then also in Pro as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Plenty of different tools there.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Did you have the SQL Java arcade
No.
before you started?
No, I got to learn that the very hard way by getting asked to do it and then having to learn it as I'm going. Yeah, you will pick it up whether you do it now or you get thrown in the deep end and have to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for going about learning it yourself?
For the arcade and some of the SQL stuff, I would recommend the Esri training catalog.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those are good. I know, yeah, it's Esri stuff. Otherwise, what's the other? LinkedIn Learning seems to have a lot of courses in that area. I would highly recommend that. We use that at work as well to upskill. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. And from our virtual presenters, we might throw to Aida next.
So typically for me, I do a lot of mapping for our projects, which is usually engineering, but data management is very important, especially when it's big data. You do have to think where you save all these data and how you're going to manage it, whether it's geodatabases or shape files, because in the end, if you don't think about how to manage all of that data and you create all these maps, you're going to have to look back at those. Let's say if you created 1,000 maps in 1 year, you have to go back and see where you have left off. And automating, you could use, that's where programming comes in. If you need to create 1,000 maps, you can't manually do it one by one. So you do have to think of, okay, what way is going to make it faster? And that's where Python usually comes in. I do work a lot with the seniors because I'm still a graduate. It takes a while for you to pick up all those skills, but if you enjoy the journey and you ask questions, learn wherever you can, you'll pick it up, and then that's where you find what you like.
Ida, do you have a favorite spatial file format? I don't want to start the great shapefile wars, but do you have a favorite?
A favorite what, sorry?
Spatial data format.
Spatial data format. Nowadays it's geodatabases.
Yeah.
It's shapefil's a bit old school now.
Nice. And lastly, Cassie.
Yeah, so my day-to-day at the moment is also a bit of mix. One of the key things I'm doing at the moment is trying to create an external web map, or web app actually, in ArcGIS Online. So my biggest barrier at the moment is my department has quite strict metadata standards. So everyone, if you don't think about metadata, that is something to consider. I'm having to do it myself and I keep getting errors everywhere. We'll get there eventually. I've only done it twice before. So that's kind of, yeah, doing a lot of collaboration as well with the area that's kind of requested the service. So a lot of back and forth to actually make sure you're producing the thing that they want, and not getting it, up on the website and then they hate it. Wouldn't be a good outcome. And some of the other things that I'm currently doing, kind of map creation is pretty common for different projects, kind of reviews a lot of the time, want to put them in their final reports, and so on. And then the not as glamorous comms work. So a lot of my stuff for HCAS is around actually trying to understand business needs to figure out, well, if we have this remote sensing model, how do we actually integrate it into their decision making and reporting as a tool? So we're doing a lot of tool creation as well. So starting to explore Power BI as a platform, which has been quite good. In terms of, I'll jump on my department, I don't have to make those tough decisions about database management. We have an enterprise geodatabase. If you want anything done, it has to go in there. So strict metadata, centralized system for uploading it into that. So I luckily can keep my hands off all of that work. And yeah, but a lot of Python programming is definitely what I'm starting to look into trying to learn. I don't currently have to use it in the majority of what I do, but the other people in my team use it quite heavily. It kind of forms the basis of a lot of the tools that we use. So you can repeat, and update the information over time. And if you get a lot of the same types of requests, you can automate it. So my recommendation, I haven't gotten very far yet, but yeah, LinkedIn Learning is really good, but I know that depending on if you have a license, I have a, enterprise license. So that means I have more availability of what's on LinkedIn Learning. So you might be restricted on what you can find, but they do have some pretty good courses that, just a couple of hours long as an introduction. And then EDX, I know that's a bit old school now too, but that has kind of dozens and dozens of Python or programming introduction courses that you can do for free. So you can just audit the course. So that's also kind of a way, if you don't, if you just want to kind of do it in your spare time and don't want to do like a university course on it and actually get graded, then that might be a kind of a way to go. But it's definitely something that people do learn on the job, but having at least kind of the foundations down, having the understanding what programming is, how it's used, the different types of things, all of that's probably a good start. And then, yeah, if you don't want to learn it right this second, you don't want to try and do it by yourself, you'll probably definitely end up learning it on the job.
That's good. Good recommendation. Thank you. I might throw it open to the floor for questions and also to our online space. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask our presenters? No question is a silly question. Or presenters, questions you'd like to ask each other?
Ooh, I can show everyone. I can quickly share my beautiful poster we created, if I know how to do that, for our Advancing Earth Observation Forum.
Yeah, sure.
If someone can tell me how to share, because I don't use Zoom ever.
There's a button that says share screen down the bottom.
Oh, needs to be a co-host first, right? Yeah.
I use Teams. I don't think
Me too.
I think Teams is the government, or like the standard.
Here we go. You should be able to now.
Oh, amazing.
Hopefully.
I can now. Sorry, everyone's going to be like, it's a really long poster. Let me know if you want me to zoom in and I'll kind of scroll around. But this is the type of comms work I'd been doing for the last couple of weeks before the Advancing Earth Observation Forum. We have another conference in the end of the year too. But this is just an idea of some of the products that this remote sensing model kind of produces, and some of in our little computer screens down the bottom, some of the tools we've been making. So I thought that was kind of fun.
They look very cool.
But it was not my design, FYI. I'm not a graphic designer.
I was going to ask that. Would you be able to zoom in for a little bit, Cassie?
Yeah. I'll start from the top. Ooh. So this is kind of these are the inputs to the model for everyone who's interested. So I'll go 0 to 1, 0 being the worst and 1 being the best, essentially. Then the actual map in the middle is the key output. So this is 18 years of remote sensing data into 1 score per pixel. So using MODIS satellite imagery, so 250 meter, so pretty large at the moment, but currently exploring getting it down to 30 meters. So that's more like paddock scale for anyone who knows different landscape to paddock scale stuff. And along the side of the high level use cases. So again, it kind of highlights across the department, and obviously this applies much more broadly to other areas too, where you could apply remote sensing in GIS. And one of the other posts is there, I'll give them a flag because I know people like marine stuff. Used UAV, so long range drones as well, to map turtles in all the different marine parks. So they're doing quite a lot of work in the marine space as well as terrestrial. So that's always a cool thing. And lastly, those are the kind of zoomed in on some of the kind of example tools that my team kind of makes, so that we all might like looking at maps, but a lot of people want quantitative data. And this is how you kind of might present it so that it's a bit more usable. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you for sharing.
That's all right.
If no one has any questions, I have plenty. My next one is, it very much sounds like you all sort of started in another area, like you had an interest that you kind of started studying, whether that was geology or planning, or for you, Cassie, just getting a really broad overview of all these kind of different areas of geographical science. Can you identify like what that turning point was that really drew you towards GIS? Was it a particular moment or a particular subject or topic, or was it kind of maybe just the availability of career opportunities? I guess, was it somewhere that you thought you'd be? And if not, like what was that point for you that drew you towards it? Maybe we'll go starting with Ida this time.
Yeah, sure. So I've actually had a thought about a job that I could work remote, and this was even before COVID. And something I could do anywhere in the world. And geospatial, it has that spatial aspect to it. And when I discovered GIS in uni, because I never actually knew what it was, I guess naturally it made me realize how much you can integrate a lot of the other disciplines into it, which is how I got into GIS. That was my turning point.
Lovely. I personally like that a lot too. I like something that you can kind of combine all your different interests together, and
yeah,
versatility of working across different projects is also a big draw. Yeah. What about you, Cassie?
Yeah, so I was always interested kind of in the geospatial kind of field. So there wasn't necessarily like a strong turning point for me, but a couple were the main two, I guess, was that I was good at it. That always makes things better. So for me, remote sensing came quite easily, and then GIS took a little bit of extra work in terms of maybe not falling asleep sometimes when you're reading things, but in terms of the actual work also came quite easily. So that makes it more enjoyable when it's something that you can do. And then again, yeah, the same thing, integrating it with different things. So I didn't have one particular field or one particular area I was super interested in. I just kind of liked learning about everything. And obviously, if you learn a platform or a software or a technique that can apply to kind of any field, that means you can keep it quite open. And then obviously, listening to parents is always wrong. My dad's a computer programmer, and he saw the vision of GIS and remote sensing into the future, and he said I should go into it. And I was like, you know what, I'm good at it, and it looks like it's something I can put to lots of fields, so why not? So that was my kind of push to keep moving in that direction, when I noticed kind of by second year everyone else was kind of falling off, and by the time I got to third year remote sensing, there was 9 of us. So, you know, ended up pretty small by the end, but hopefully that's growing kind of now.
Yeah, fair enough. If you find something you're good at, might as well stick with it, especially if there's lots of opportunities in it. Round us off, Oliver.
Sure. So I guess like I've always had an interest in maps. I just didn't know what I could do with them. Started out in planning, and then in that first year there was the Intro to GIS course, which was really like the light bulb moment of, oh, this is really cool. I could spend my day looking and working with maps, which, yeah, I guess I wasn't too worried about finding a job or a career. It was more finding something that I was passionate about, because at the end of the day, whatever field you end up in, you will find a job there and a career out of it. Yeah, I'm just glad to have found this one. Yeah, then obviously, like Cassie, the third year spatial modelling course at Griffith, there was 5 of us in there. Everyone had fallen away. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Everyone sort of just drips off because they don't enjoy it.
Small cohorts.
Yes, makes it fun though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Very cool. I'll open it up for questions from the floor again, if anyone has a question, or online. Any questions from John?
Where do you see yourselves going next?
Did you hear that online?
Yeah.
Yep. Where do you see yourselves going next? Cassie, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I guess I'm not really sure. I guess it's still early days. I think I'll eventually kind of, want to move around a bit more to try different kind of types of geospatial work. That's not just kind of, I've been in kind of one area for most of the time. But there's a lot more either my department offers, or for me, because I'm from Brisbane, probably potentially moving back and looking at opportunities. I know that we talk quite a lot with the Queensland government and the type of work that the Queensland government's done across like slats, early detection, all that type of work. So it's kind of, I want to keep exploring different areas and different techniques as well. So drones are also a big thing that my department loves. Whether that's the future or just a phase at the moment, I don't know, but it might be fun to explore. So keeping kind of things a bit more open.
Cool. And Oliver?
I don't know. I'm kind of just playing it by ear, seeing where I end up. Pretty happy at Esri at the moment. I don't see myself leaving for a while yet. I'd like to eventually go back to uni and go into master's and PhD. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard. It's difficult to say what you want to do because it's hard to predict.
That's fair. Would you pursue your higher degree also geospatial?
Definitely related to it. I don't know if it would be the main focus though. Yeah. But I definitely incorporate it however I can.
Yeah. Cool. And Ida?
For me, I guess it's the same answer, right? Not entirely sure. Don't actually have a set plan, like for the next 5 years, but I do want to explore what I can do in geospatial and probably move away from my work, which is consulting. So I think in the beginning, I wanted to focus on being a GIS developer, but I do realize that's a lot of programming work, which if you haven't started at an early age, you would really need to work hard if you want to continue doing it. But yeah, I guess exploring what I could specialize in GIS, because I think if once you pick one, you could focus more and do more things with it.
Nice. Maybe to finish this off for a final question, I guess thinking if you're giving advice to your younger self, what would your top tip be for younger you or other students who might be listening in, either online or in the recording of this in the future?
I can start.
Yeah.
I guess don't be afraid. I've always been scared of making the wrong decision. I wanted everything to be perfect and right, make no mistakes. But once I got into work, you actually realize you make a lot of mistakes, and it's okay as long as you do admit it. And it's okay to not take up a career that you started into. Let's say if I didn't like GIS in the next 5 years, it's okay to get out of it. People think you have to stick with it. It's okay because there's always other options.
That's really nice advice. Thank you. Cassie?
I was on mute. I guess maybe like one of the main things would be, I think I agree, you don't have to stick in one, even if you like the GIS or geospatial field, you don't have to like stick in the same area. You can definitely kind of move around. I think one of the other things would be that don't worry about kind of career prospects. There's definitely stuff that you can do out there, and that really came through. Unfortunately, there weren't a lot of undergraduates or lower level university students at the Advancing Earth Observation Forum, but one of the key things that they're like there's a shortage of people with geospatial skills. We really need people. There's like opportunities and jobs kind of everywhere, so it's definitely like a growing field. So if it's something that you're interested in, you don't need to be concerned that you'll just never actually get into the industry, because once you're kind of in, you can move around. It's not like you will be able to kind of shuffle if you want to keep trying to find where you fit within the industry. And I think like the last point is you don't have to love research either. So for me, research isn't like the thing that I really want to go into. Some people love it, some people don't. So it's like it's a good skill to have, because obviously learning new techniques or being able to keep up with the field that you're in is important. But you don't have to like want to go straight into that space, or you don't have to technically do a higher level degree, but it obviously is still, you know, kind of preferred, and it allows you to get more opportunities. But yeah, I think that's an important point. So if you don't love research, you can still go into the GIS or geospatial field as well.
Very nice. And Oliver?
I would say be comfortable not knowing where you're going to end up. I guess while I was always at uni, I wanted a clear path. I wanted to know what I was doing, what's happening next year, what am I doing tomorrow. But yeah, just sort of letting go of it and seeing what feels right. Yeah, going there.
I feel like that's quite a common theme across everyone. We're all human.
Yeah.
We don't know where our fates are going to take us, where we're going to end up, but going with the flow, making the most of your opportunities, and I guess being okay to follow your heart if you want to do something different seems to be a common theme coming through. Nice. All right. Well, last chance for questions if anyone has them.
I've got one.
Yeah.
How do you explain what you do to people that don't know GIS?
That's a great question.
This is one that I just have not been able to crack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good, I don't know, it was hard because I realized when I was in honours, and one of our assignments was describing your honours abstract in the most common, like 1,000 words, and it was almost impossible. But I think describing it, I usually stick kind of sort of maybe to the remote sensing side of things. I'm like, oh yeah, I use satellite imagery to like investigate environmental kind of questions, or like something in that space, because it keeps it quite open in general, whereas GIS is a bit more complicated. Sometimes I'll say, and I'll be like, you know, like Google Maps, that's a GIS, and that's and people go, oh, and I'm like, that's not exactly what I do, but close enough. Gets the point across that it's kind of a integrated data in a system. So kind of depends who you're talking to, but yeah, it's pretty tricky.
For me, yeah, it's a very difficult question, but it depends how much time you have to explain to the person that asks. Let's say if I don't have time, I'll just say, oh, I make maps. But it's more than maps. My boss would scold me for saying that. He'll be like, it's more than maps. It's data and how you use that to convey a message and then make decisions, and, you know, make the environment better. We could actually use those spatial data. That's a simple way to put it.
Yeah, no, my parents still have no idea what I do for work. They've got no clue. Yeah, I've tried explaining so many times.
I told people I worked with dirt once, and now I'm just the person who works with dirt forevermore. So I feel you on that one.
Yeah.
But it's the same with geology. It's like geologists just look at rocks.
Yeah.
End of story. That's their job. Nothing else.
Yes, maybe that's something we can take forward with us from this night, is working on our communication.
Yeah.
Getting the message out there a little bit more. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming along, both audience and speakers as well. It's been really great to hear from people, and hear from people working across different areas of the industry too, from government and private, and your journeys to get here. John likes to do a little spiel at the end of our presentations, which is, I don't know, might give it a shot myself tonight if you want.
I've got to get out.
Yeah, go for it. Which is just to say that the Royal Geographical Society of Queensland is a great place to be. And within the Young Geographers group here, we're really trying to build a bit of an environment for students and for early career professionals to get together, to meet, to talk about their careers, talk about our passions and our things that we find interesting, and to connect across Queensland, or in this case, across state borders as well. For any students out there, membership for the society is free. We try and keep our RGSQ Young Geographer events free as well to make them a bit more accessible, and do online events where we can. If you're no longer a student or not a full-time student, membership for the society is only $60 a year, which for some might be a little bit much, and that's okay, but it gets you a lot of access to a lot of things, particularly if you're here in Brisbane. You get access to all of our lovely resources here. For those of you online, I'm gesturing at the library. We've got lots of books. I know I like to come in and look at the books. Our map collection, and we have so many events on offer. Even just our monthly lectures, if you consider you've got 12 or 11 lectures a year, $60, $5 a lecture, and you get to hear from either academics or retired academics, people working in the industry, people with a special interest. There's some people out there who know a heck of a lot of stuff about some very niche topics, and their lectures are absolutely fascinating. All of our lectures are online as well with Zoom options, which is really great if you're not in Southeast Queensland or you're interstate but still want to be part of the society. So yeah, I highly recommend it. And if you're still not sure, you're a bit on the fence, feel free to come along to our other Young Geographer events and maybe see how you feel in the future. Anything I missed?
Any events coming up?
Yes, we do have events coming up. We decided to give ourselves just like a lot of things to do this month. So we actually have an event next week, pretty much same time, Tuesday evening, but starting a little bit later, 7:30. The first Tuesday of the month is our regular lecture slot, and for September, Young Geographers are taking over the floor with our, what are we calling it, our Young Professionals Forum, I think. We're going to have an awesome presentation from someone working also in this kind of industry about her work, her projects, which will be really, really cool. The event link is up on the website. Event link will be up on the website soon, and on Facebook as well on this group if you came through there to get to this event. Will also be up probably tomorrow morning. We've also got an event coming up in 2 weekends time, September the 10th, a Saturday, potentially Sunday as well, depending what kind of numbers we get, where we're just going to be setting ourselves up here, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a mapathon. So if you're interested in GIS, perhaps you're studying at a university at the moment, or you just kind of have a bit of a passion project that you're working on, feel free to come along and join us, bring a laptop and something you want to work on, or maybe an idea of something you want to explore, a particular skill, and yeah, feel free to join us. I'm particularly looking forward to that one. Anything else? No? All right. Well, thank you for coming tonight. It's been great to hear from everyone and see everyone. I think we'll sign off. Enjoy the rest of your evening.